Greetings from Snake Mountain Boat Works on Friday, April 11, 2025. Here's an update on Connie, who looks quite a bit different than she did on March 7th when we uploaded the preceding video. At that point, Joe was bunging the decks and cutting seam lines. So what I thought I'd ask him to do is to walk us through step by step from there to here. So Joe, take it away.
Yeah, so after I had all my bungs installed, I had all my seams cut in there. I went through every single one of these seams with some 80 grit attached to a paint stir stick, because amazingly they're exactly the right width with sandpaper on there. So you go through, get these all cleaned up, blew them all out, all over the place. And then from there, I made sure that these decks were all faired with our longboard sanders with 80 grit. We went over this boat probably about 5 or 6 times because some of the decks, they were definitely needed some new straightening out. So after we got it all sanded, I went and used the Daly's bleach solution, which is 1 part A to 3 parts B. Makes it super, super, super white, makes the wood and the grain all uniform again. That way you're not getting any color differences. And the important part with that is you want to keep an eye on it. You want to bleach it, kind of bleach it all day, keep it wet. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure you're keeping the moisture content right. So I prefer to have it just below 15% humidity once I go to put stain on this. And before we stain it, once it's all dry, we take a Scotch-Brite pad and just lightly scuff off the dust, and then we'll vacuum it and get it cleaned. And then off to the Mike Mayer's gelled stain, we went through this.
That was Postwar Chris, right?
Postwar Chris, which is a beautiful color. They got that mixed down perfect. So once we got it all stained, we went through and once again, I let it dry, making sure you're not getting any light or dark spots. And then we put on 4 coats of Smith's Clear Penetrating Epoxy Sealer. You can put one right after the other for the first 2, and then you want to really let it cure, 8 to 10 hours before you put the last 2 on. And then once that's fully encapsulated and cleaned, we'll go through and I'll lightly scuff that with 220, just very, very carefully, because when you bleach and add anything wet to a boat with new bungs in it, you'll see they want to rise up a little bit, so you want to be really careful with that. And if you do ever happen where even after you put the CPES on it, if you scuff the area really lightly with 80, you can reapply the varnish, because that way it'll actually have something to bite into. So
Reapply the varnish or the stain?
Reapply the stain onto the area where you may have knocked it down with a sand or anything like that.
That's one of the really incredible aspects of Mike Mayer's gelled stain, is that you can do that.
Absolutely. You can't really do that with a filler stain, because once that's on, you're done. You can't do anything about it. But from there, we've been putting on varnish on it once to twice a day on a nice dry day. And here you can get usually 2 coats, one first thing in the morning and one at night. And every 3 coats, we go through and scuff it by hand with 320. After that, vacuuming it off.
Are they on a sanding block?
All on a sanding block, but a lot of the times we'll do it just by hand, because all you're trying to do is abrade it a little bit. So that way you're in between your coats, you're getting good adhesion.
But you don't want to sand so much that you essentially lose the last 2 coats you applied.
Right. Yeah.
I've seen that happen way too many times.
This is more or less just a wipe down with sandpaper. You're not really trying to put any muscle into it. But after about 7 or 8 coats, we can get flatboard out. Not try and flatten it out all at once, but you want to keep going over it, so that way you get all your high areas down and your lower areas start to come back up. Right now, we're about ready to put the 15th coat on it. And usually somewhere between 15 and 20, we should be able to flatboard it completely.
But are you switching to Captain's Ultra Clear now?
So no, I won't be switching to that yet, because we have to tape off all of our seams. And from there, we are going to be paving in our Interlux boot stripe paint, or striping paint, which we use frog tape. I tape it all up nice and clean. put one coat on it and wait till it's just about tacky where you can touch it with your finger and you just barely getting like a little faint line on your hand. Then apply your second coat. Directly after that second coat, you can pull your tape, because once you already have that gelled paint in there in the beginning, it will not bleed. Because if you leave it on there, you know, let it dry with the tape on there, it's just gonna, the tape and the paint are gonna bond to each other, but it will wick under the tape no matter what kind of tape.
Okay, I've got a question. Interlux seam paint is beautifully brilliant white and costs $25 for a half pint. Interlux topside paint is brilliant white. They're about the same consistency and cost whatever a gallon or a quart of that costs, but a tiny fraction of the striping paint. Why not just use bright side?
Well, unfortunately,
Topside.
Unfortunately, when you tend to do that, no matter how long you let that paint dry, no matter what, as soon as you put any kind of varnish on it, it starts to bleed out from underneath it, and you'll get white in between your layers of varnish, and it looks terrible. Not only is it terrible, but it's a pain to try to get it off afterwards. So when we use the striping paint, once this is done, I will not put a single drop of varnish on this for 2.5 weeks. I really let that cure up good. And then I'll start laying on our Captain's Clear, which it's a great product. The only problem that we have with it is, depending on the humidity of the shop, you have to be very, very fast with it, because no matter how much thinner you put in it, it tacks very quickly. The only thing, and another thing, is if you put too much thinner in it, you'll actually change the color of the varnish. It will start to turn amberish all over the white. So it's a very, very fine balance of what you can and can't do with it.
And that's your rolling and tipping then.
Rolling and tipping,
Right.
absolutely. And we'll finish up with Captains. Usually the last 3 or 4 coats is complete Captains, and we'll let that harden up really good, and it buffs a lot easier. And you won't get any of the amberish. When you are wet sanding these to buff it, if you use just ambered varnish, you'll get kind of yellow streaks on top of your white, which another thing, it's hard to get out. So Captains is always a must.
You get some orange peel possibly with the Pettit high build.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's not as hard. It doesn't have, I don't think it has the same catalyst in it, so it
Right.
doesn't quite get as hard.
Why don't you tell us why these seams look like they're mahogany?
Well, that's the Sikaflex 291 LOT. The reason I tend to use this, it's easier to paint. A lot of people are probably thinking, well, why don't you use the white? The only problem with the white is varnish will not dry to it. No matter what you do to it, you can try the LOT, the 291, 295, it will not cure with Captains. And that will actually turn green.
That's a pretty good reason.
Yeah, so I prefer to always paint stripe my decks, because you're encasing it in varnish. You're not going to sit there and drop something on your deck and it's going to scratch it off. It's completely encapsulated and it looks just as great.
What's kind of neat about this mahogany Sikaflex also is that no matter how careful you are with a reefing hook or the sanding stick, it's always conceivable that you'll take a little chip or two off the edge. Well, this Mahogany Sikaflex fills that chip, fills that void, so that when you paint the line in, you don't see a great big nick behind it along the edge. It's nice and true.
And with the ambered varnish over it, it really takes in the color of the deck alone. So over time, once we get a few more coats on this, all the seams they all float in with each other.
Well, that's our update. You might ask, why'd you wait so long to do an update video on this boat? It's really not very exciting to watch somebody roll and tip varnish. The only thing less exciting than that is watching the varnish dry. So we waited till we had a real milestone, and here we are, because we've got enough varnish on at 14 coats that Joe can now flat sand it very carefully, right, and continue on towards 20. With that, we'll complete this update on our 1950 Chris Craft U22. Thank you so much. Bye-bye for now from Snake Mountain Boat Works.